It never starts with a confession. It starts with a pause, a breath held too long, a sentence that almost turns back, and then a truth appears between you and the other person, fragile and unfinished. When someone says, "I don't usually tell people this," they are not just speaking, they are choosing where to place their inner world. That choice is never random. People don't reveal personal stories to those who feel temporary. They reveal them to those who feel steady. When someone trusts you with something private, it means your presence has become emotionally meaningful. You are no longer just part of the conversation. You are part of their internal landscape. Welcome to Be Feminine, where unspoken emotions and hidden psychology come into the light. If you want to understand human connection at a deeper level, subscribe now, because the way people open up to you will never look the same after this. Here's what most people misunderstand about secrets. A secret is not about the information itself. It's about the relationship it creates. When someone shares something personal, their mind is quietly asking, "Can I exist honestly here?" And when you don't interrupt, don't rush, don't judge. Their nervous system records safety. That memory stays longer than words. Sometimes the first thing they reveal is disappointment. They may say, "I feel misunderstood," or "I don't fit in the way I wish I did." On the surface, it sounds like frustration. Beneath it, it's connection. They are letting you see the gap between who they are and who they pretend to be. That gap is where bonds form. When someone tells you about a painful experience, not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet one, something psychological happens. They are reliving emotion in a controlled environment. Your calm presence becomes associated with relief. Their mind links you to comfort without them realizing it. That's how emotional trust begins, not with excitement, but with permission. Listen closely to how their voice changes when they talk about these things. It slows, softens, as if they are stepping carefully through their own memories. This is not weakness. This is courage. They are lowering the shield they use with the world. And the person who sees behind the shield becomes different from everyone else. Another kind of truth people reveal is about identity. They may say, "I pretend to be confident," or "I don't always feel strong." These are not casual statements. These are admissions of inner contrast, the difference between image and reality. When someone shows you that difference, they are trusting you with their unfinished self. Psychologically, this creates emotional alignment. You now hold a version of them that others do not see. And humans naturally grow closer to those who see them clearly. Sometimes they speak about hopes instead of pain. They might say, "I want more from life," or "I'm trying to become someone better." These statements sound simple, but they reveal direction. You are being shown where their mind is traveling, and when you listen without steering them, they feel understood instead of influenced. That's an important difference. Connection is not built by guiding someone, it is built by witnessing them. Notice what happens after these moments. They remember small details about you. They ask questions that go deeper. They pause before speaking, as if checking whether the space still feels safe. These are not habits. These are emotional adjustments. Their inner world is learning where it can rest. And here is the part most people miss. Trust grows faster in silence than in speech. When you allow space instead of filling it, when you receive instead of responding too quickly, you show emotional maturity. That maturity feels rare in a world that rushes to react. Safety is created when nothing is demanded. Think of connection like a bridge. Every honest moment adds a plank. Every patient response adds support. One conversation does not build it, but consistency does. And once someone feels that bridge beneath them, they cross it without thinking. They don't feel pulled. They feel allowed. This is why real closeness doesn't look dramatic. It looks quiet. It looks like late conversations, like unguarded sentences. Like someone saying, I don't usually talk about this, and not regretting it afterward. Because they weren't met with pressure, they were met with presence. And presence is rare. People don't grow attached to intensity. They grow attached to emotional stability. To the place where their thoughts don't have to perform. To the space where they can exist without explanation. So when someone shares their inner thoughts with you, they are not moving closer physically. They are moving closer psychologically. They are letting you stand inside their private reality. And once someone invites you there, something changes. Because connection doesn't begin with attraction. It begins with safety. And safety reshapes relationships. Once someone feels safe speaking, something else begins to happen beneath the surface. Their thoughts start organizing around you, not because you asked them to, not because you guided them, but because your presence became a reference point. The mind remembers where it felt calm. This is how emotional patterns form. People don't consciously decide, I trust this person. Their nervous system decides first. It measures tone, timing, reactions. It asks, was I interrupted? Was I rushed? Was I judged? And if the answer is no, it stores you differently than everyone else. You become a place instead of a person. That's why after meaningful conversations, they may message you first. Not with urgency, but with comfort. Not with drama, but with ease. They don't reach out because they need attention. They reach out because their mind recognizes your presence as familiar and steady. And familiarity, when combined with understanding, feels like belonging. There is a subtle moment when this shift happens. It usually appears as curiosity. They begin asking about your experiences, your thoughts, your past, not to collect information, but to build symmetry. Emotional connection needs balance. Once they've shown you something real, they want to see something real in return. Not exposure, reflection. They want to know if your inner world can sit next to theirs without conflict. When you answer honestly, without exaggeration or performance, something quiet settles between you. Mutual recognition. Two inner worlds acknowledging each other without trying to reshape one another. This is what emotional maturity looks like from the outside, and it feels rare. Many people confuse connection with intensity. They think closeness must be loud, dramatic, constant, but real closeness feels calm. It feels like time moving slower. It feels like conversations that don't need an ending, because neither side feels pushed. Watch how their language changes as this bond grows. At first, they speak in general terms. People always, everyone thinks. Later, it becomes personal. I feel. I noticed. I've been thinking. That shift means the conversation is no longer about the world. It's about their inner experience. And when someone invites you into their inner experience, they are practicing emotional presence with you. This is where many connections fail. People rush to advise, to solve, to correct. But emotional safety isn't built through answers. It's built through containment. Through being able to hold someone's thoughts without rearranging them. When someone says, I don't know what I want, and you don't try to define it for them, you show respect for their inner process. That respect feels stabilizing. It tells them their confusion is allowed, and what is allowed becomes expressed. Over time, they begin to speak more freely, less carefully, less rehearsed. Their words become less polished and more real. This isn't because they trust you more intellectually. It's because their emotional guard has relaxed. They are no longer performing themselves. This is why true connection can't be forced. It forms when someone realizes they don't need armor in your presence. They can sit with uncertainty, with unfinished thoughts, with contradictions. And you don't leave. Silence becomes comfortable too. Not awkward, not heavy, just shared space without urgency. This kind of silence only exists where emotional safety has already been built. And safety does something important. It allows reflection. They start seeing themselves more clearly through the way you respond, not because you define them, but because you don't distort them. Your calm reactions become a mirror. They see their emotions more accurately because you didn't exaggerate them or dismiss them. This is how trust deepens, through emotional clarity. At this stage, connection no longer feels like effort. It feels like rhythm, like knowing when to speak and when to wait, like recognizing when something matters and when it's just noise. And what grows in this rhythm is something most people crave but rarely name: emotional reliability. To know that when they speak, they won't be misunderstood. To know that when they pause, they won't be rushed. To know that when they share, it won't be turned into something else. Reliability feels grounding in a world that constantly shifts. And slowly, their mind begins to associate your presence with emotional order, not control, not influence, but stability. The place where thoughts land without resistance. This is why connection changes behavior without instruction. They don't adjust because you ask them to. They adjust because something inside them wants to preserve the space they feel safe in, and what we preserve, we move toward. Not physically at first, psychologically. They think of you when something meaningful happens, when something confuses them, when something needs to be said but not explained. That's not dependence, that's emotional orientation. You become part of their internal map. And once someone places you there, conversations stop being just conversations. They become continuation, threads instead of moments, a shared narrative instead of separate thoughts. This is how emotional closeness forms without force, without pursuit, without pressure, not through intensity, but through consistency, not through charm, but through presence. And presence reshapes how people feel around you. There comes a moment when connection no longer feels like something that is forming, it feels like something that already exists. Conversations no longer need an opening. Silence no longer needs an excuse. What once required effort now feels natural. And this is how you know something meaningful has taken root. They no longer measure their words as carefully. Not because they've become careless, but because they've become comfortable. Their thoughts arrive without rehearsal. Their emotions don't need decoration. What you hear is closer to what they actually feel. This is the stage where trust stops being an idea and becomes an atmosphere. They begin to share things in real time, not just in reflection. Instead of saying, "I used to feel this way," they say, "I feel this right now." That shift is important. It means you are no longer hearing about their inner world after it has passed. You are standing inside it while it happens, and being allowed there changes how you are seen. You become associated with honesty, with clarity, with emotional rest. Your presence no longer feels like something external. It feels like part of their emotional routine, like something that belongs in their day the same way quiet moments belong in the night. This is why connection doesn't announce itself. It reveals itself through patterns. They seek your perspective without needing advice. They share moments without needing reassurance. They don't ask for attention. They include you in their inner dialogue. That inclusion is the deepest form of closeness. At this point, many people make a mistake. They try to define the connection, to label it, to rush it into certainty. But emotional bonds grow best when they are allowed to breathe, when they are felt instead of managed. The more space you give without withdrawing, the more natural the bond becomes. This is what emotional intelligence looks like in motion: knowing when to speak, knowing when to listen, knowing when to simply remain. Not every meaningful connection needs intensity. Some need steadiness. Some need quiet recognition. Some need time to unfold without pressure. And when that happens, something subtle changes inside the other person. They no longer experience you as separate from their emotional life. You become part of how they process things, how they reflect, how they calm themselves. You become a reference point, not because you positioned yourself there, but because you stayed consistent enough to be placed there. This is how influence forms without intention, how closeness forms without pursuit, how trust forms without strategy. Real connection doesn't grow from trying to matter. It grows from being present, from not demanding more than the moment offers, from not turning vulnerability into a transaction, from not confusing listening with controlling. And this is why emotional safety is so powerful. It allows someone to be unfinished, to be uncertain, to be in motion without being corrected. When someone feels that freedom with you, they don't feel small, they feel seen. And what feels seen feels real. Over time, they begin to protect the space you share. They avoid disrupting it. They speak carefully when it matters. They return to it when things feel heavy, not because they are attached to you as a person, but because they are attached to how they feel around you. And that feeling becomes memory. Memory becomes expectation. Expectation becomes emotional direction. This is how connection reshapes behavior quietly, without command, without persuasion, without force, just through presence. So when someone shares their inner thoughts with you, when they let you hear what they don't say out loud to others, when they speak without hiding, it is not a moment to seize. It is a moment to hold. Because connection is not built by taking, it is built by receiving. And receiving someone's inner world with care is the strongest signal you can send. Not that you want something from them, but that you respect what they are becoming. And respect creates safety. Safety creates closeness. Closeness creates meaning. This is how bonds form without noise, without urgency, without fear. Not through attraction alone, but through emotional permission. And once that permission exists, something lasting begins. Because real connection doesn't arrive loudly, it settles quietly. And when it settles, it stays.